All right, so I'm Jonathan Belcher, JB. Oh yeah. So I'm doing this live on a Hangout on Air. So if you look me up on YouTube, I'm Belcher J. You'll be able to find the video. I'll make sure that I post the video into the meeting notes so that you can find it. So I want to start off and talk about Chrome Canary. Who had heard of Chrome Canary before I posted in the Meetup notes? So a couple people. What Chrome Canary is, it's one of the latest builds of Chrome. That's usually about that's two versions ahead of what's released publicly. I don't recommend it for your everyday use. It has bugs, and they release new builds daily. So you're getting a very a bit of a buggy browser, and you'll have issues. What I really like about Chrome Canary as a developer is it gives me the opportunity to test the software that I'm developing in a couple versions ahead of what's coming to the public. So if something happens, I know a couple months ahead of time of what's coming down the road and what could possibly break my my website. A good example of that is Object Observe is being removed from Google Chrome. So now they're starting to message that out in Chrome Canary that Object Observe is being removed. So I got that 2 months before everybody else got that, so I have a little bit more time. Additionally, Chrome Canary has the latest and greatest of the Chrome developer tools. So it has a bunch of features that you're just not going to find in the stable Chrome release. So let's talk about Chrome DevTools. Who has never used Chrome DevTools? All right, and who uses Chrome DevTools once a month? Who uses Chrome DevTools every day? All right. So we have a good mix. There's a lot of people that use it every day. I use it every day. I use it probably every 10 minutes. And I found that once I started exploring, there was so much depth to the DevTools that I didn't know nearly as much as I thought I had. So what we're going to do is we're going to step through the DevTools and take a deep dive into all the different pieces. But first, I'd like to share some resources. So this the link to these docs? All right, I got to share the docs quick. So this is going to go in the Philadelphia JavaScript Developers Meetup as a comment. Yes. Okay, so we have resources. So Umar, I hope that's how you pronounce his name, started putting out daily GIFs on really amazing tips on how to do things in the Chrome DevTools. He has since expanded to having daily GIFs about other dev things, how to do things in Sublime. But a lot of them are talking about Chrome DevTools, and they're really quick 5-second GIFs that tell you how to do something. So let me find a great example here. DOM tree search by CSS selector and internet. There you go. So we'll give that another couple seconds. But really, these you can sign up for the newsletter, and once a week, once every couple of days, whenever he gets to it, you'll get a GIF in your email that explains to you how to do something, and super duper powerful. And as you can see, it's animating and tells you how to do things. And that's what got me really excited about diving deeper into Chrome DevTools. Another great resource is following Paul Irish. Who's familiar with Paul Irish? Okay, so not that many people. Paul Irish works for developer relations at Google, and so he works specifically on the Chrome DevTools. So he's definitely someone to follow for all the latest and greatest. So there's also a website, developers.google.com. So that website in and of itself is really amazing. But they have a section specifically about the Chrome DevTools, and there's a lot of information here. It'll probably take you a couple hours to go through. Going through this information would be super helpful in addition to listening tonight. And then one last thing, and I haven't been able to find this page in the new documentation, but it's the console API reference. Actually, I do know where that is. There we go. So the console API reference is pretty darn amazing. So it gives you all of the API for console.log, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But there's so many different things that you can do with console. Again, I'm Jonathan Belcher, JB. I work for FIS Global. We were SunGuard, so you might have heard me say that I worked for SunGuard before, but now we're FIS Global. We are hiring front-end developers, so if you're looking for a job, come talk to us. And I'm also a Google developer expert. So yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. So I'm going to be using the Polymer presentation website that I created, just because I know how it works, I know how it's built, but we're not talking about Polymer tonight. So let's start by opening up your Chrome console. So who opens your Chrome console by clicking and right-clicking and then hitting inspect? That is my favorite way of doing it. There's several different ways. You can open up your Chrome console from over here somewhere. More tools. Yeah, so I have to go more tools, and then I have to go developer tools. I don't know. It just seems a lot slower than just right-clicking and getting in. And then, oh, that's certainly not it. It's Chrome Option I. We'll open and close it. Or I'm sorry, Command Option I. And then I assume that that's Control Option I in Windows. It's F12. Control Shift I does it as well. Awesome. So let's go ahead and overview what each of these panels do. And then I want to go into the settings to show you how to modify your developer tools so that they can best fit your personality, your how you work. So the elements shows you your rendered HTML that's on the page. And it shows you the different styles. If you click on an element, it shows you what those styles do, what those styles are. It allows you can modify things live. Console is a JavaScript console inside of the browser, and that gives you can run commands there. That's also where all of your console.logs, console.warns, all of those things go. Your sources contains all of the source files for the website that you're currently viewing and your workspaces, and you can edit them here. This is also where you run the debugger. Network is where all of your network calls show up. So you can see all of the different things that you're requesting from a server inside of the network panel. Timeline lets you record what's happening in your browser, and then see all of the different commands, all of the different paints, all of the different things that are happening in the browser, so that you can understand the performance of your website and what's happening underneath the covers. You could also profile your CPU and your heap snapshots. You can also check out your resources. If you want to take a look at your cookies, you can see those cookies. You can modify those cookies. You can modify your local storage. There's lots and lots of things that you can edit inside of that panel. Security panel is relatively new. Google has said that they want you to use HTTPS. If you're not using HTTPS, they're going to start docking you in the search engines. So you don't want to have bad, SEO. You also don't want to have one of those like red icons in the top left-hand corner with the unlocked lock. You want it to be all green and happy for your users. So the security panel tells you what you need to do to get that happy green lock. You can also run audits. So let's jump into the settings page and see all that it has to offer. Let me make this a little bigger so we can see. Can everybody see properly? Okay. Who would have thought the Control Plus does not work when the settings are open? Pro tip. All right, so I've reset everything in mine back to stock. So this is what you should be seeing if you have your stock settings. The first thing I like to do is I like to disable the cache. So if I have the Chrome DevTools open, I don't want anything to be cached. Makes sense, right? So you're editing a website. If you're refreshing that website, you probably want it to clear the cache for you so that you can get the new version of whatever you're working on. This is an interesting one, disable JavaScript. I don't know many websites today that have the requirement to work without JavaScript, but if you do have that requirement, then disabling JavaScript will disable the JavaScript in the page so that you can see how your page would perform should there not be JavaScript there. So if I undo that, you can see that the website works again. And the other thing is all of these settings, as soon as you click the button, it automatically does that thing. There's no save button. So be aware of that. Enable Command 1 through 9 shortcut to switch panels. I use this a lot. So I'm hitting Command 1, Command 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, I hit 0. So if I hit Command 1, it takes me to Elements super quick. And I know if I hit Command 2, I can go to Console super quick. So those are pretty helpful. I'm also this kind of person. I like my console dark. So when I'm using Atom or whatever IDE, Vim, whatever you use, I always like that dark with the white text on top. So I always make my console look like that. I'm going to disable that because Everybody's probably used to this. So one of my favorite things, I use vertical screen. So I have 2 monitors that are vertical. So I usually have my panel on the bottom. So I have this because I have plenty of space for my console, for my developer tools, while I have plenty of space for the website. Some people don't like that, and you can move it very quickly by docking it to the right, or you can put it in a completely different window. So the completely different window is super nice if you have multiple screens and you have something that you want to view full screen, but you also want to edit it on your other screen. But when I head home and I'm just using my laptop, I always throw it to the right. So it's super nice. You can dock it wherever you want. But in the settings, you can tell it what you want the default panel layout to be. You don't have to worry about that. That's so if you are debugging something in the browser, let's see here. Oh God. Bower components, Google Slides, Google Slides. Next page. So if I click this, if I set a breakpoint and I'm using the debugger, it puts this overlay on top of the page and doesn't let you select anything, doesn't let you do anything, and gives you this thing, this play button right here at the top of the screen, right? So like sometimes you want to see what's in the screen and you don't want that overlay there. So if you go back to your settings, and settings are F1. So if you disable the paused state overlay, then when you click the button, it'll pause it, but what it's not going to do, it's not going to add that overlay. So as you can see here, I'm paused currently. It's broken on, it's stopped at this point on this line. And nothing is clickable, but it does have that overlay gone. Not terribly useful, but it gets rid of that gray. So if you have like color issues, you want to investigate. Okay, so maybe I like it being there because that way I know I'm in debugger mode. So you can set the color modes. So how you want your colors to be set in the elements page. So I personally like hex. And that's what I use a lot. A lot of people use RGB. I have never even used HSL. Has anybody used HSL before? Oh. Yeah, no, I never even. Yeah, I've never even messed with that. So I leave as authored, largely because I want to see the way that I'm going to see it in the CSS files. Don't worry about Shadow DOM. Word wrap. This is sort of an interesting one, and I've heard people go both ways on that. When you are in, oh, slide to the side. What did I do? Ah, there we go. So when you have your panel here, it's going to word wrap all the things. I want to get something nice and long here. Okay, so as you can see here, it's wrapping all of the different lines inside of the HTML, right? And this is okay. So let's say I'm here, I inspect this element, but then I go in nice and tight. I need to make it smaller for some reason. I have no idea where that H1 is anymore. So I have to re-click it and I have to inspect. So now it shows up again. So if you want to turn off that word wrap, it's just as simple as, I can't resize in the settings. It's just a matter of unchecking the word wrap. So another great one is the reveal DOM node on hover. So when you are in the elements panel, you can hover over elements and it will highlight that element and show you where it is on the page. Now, if you're highlighting something that isn't on the page, see how I'm highlighting the Google Slides here? Those don't exist within the viewport of the browser right now, so they don't highlight. You can turn that off if you don't like it. I really love it, especially since it shows me the size of that element. It's really nice to be able to say, okay, well, that's 399 pixels by 48, perfect. So I know in my head, when working with the CSS, I don't have to like look over here and find this panel. Yes. I don't know. You know what would be a good idea? You should tweet at Paul and ask him, because like he'll know. Paul Irish, he'll be able to tell you right off the bat. And if there isn't a way, then you telling him tells him that you want that feature, and then he'll tell the people who write these things that that's a feature that they want. Okay. So let's go back into settings. Sorry, this is a little monotonous. We're going to get through the settings panel, and then we're going to get into the fun stuff. I thought I had show rulers on. So show rulers. It's going to be really tough to see, but you see I can't use my finger, and if I move over here, it won't show. Okay, so I'm going to come over and point to it over here. So you can see these little rulers right here, these little guidelines. So that allows you to use the rulers on the top and the left to see what's going on with and where your text is lined up within the X and Y coordinates. So that's super powerful. Next. Okay, so sources. JavaScript source maps. Who uses source maps? Awesome. A lot of people in the room are going to start using source maps in the near future. I predict it. A lot of, if you've heard of ES6, ES 2015, all of these new features that are coming to JavaScript, all of these things that the browsers do not currently support yet. A lot of people will use something like Babel, right? And so what Babel does is it takes ES, 6, ES 2015, all of that code, the new features, and makes it into code that will run in your browser. There's other tools like people have heard of CoffeeScript, I'm sure. There's like true, even even minified code, obfuscated code. Great call. I don't know. I didn't think of that. And so all of these things that we do, we write code and then we use some sort of process to, wrench it down, minify it, transpile it, do all of these crazy things. Well, we still want to be able to figure out what's going on. Where in my code do I need to change something to make it work and view it inside of the Chrome DevTools. And so that's what your JavaScript source maps are. I like this button, detect indentation. So when you have a JavaScript file that has been minified and crushed down, it removes all the spaces, the detect indentation will add that white space back in when you're viewing it in the Chrome DevTools. So in your editor, if you are looking at a source file, let me find a good one here. Let's go back to Google Slides. So what's this long line? That's a tab. What are these little dots? Those are spaces. So this tells me I need to go back into this file and I need to do a pull request because they're mixing tabs and spaces. One of the big no-nos, right? So the show white space will show you, will have dots for spaces and lines for indents inside of your source code. It'll also show you your trailing space if you tell it to. All right. Ooh, this is a fun one. Display variable values inline while debugging. I still have my, I do not. Sources, come down here. So I'm going to put a breakpoint in. So I stopped it. So now I'm going to step through. It's not showing me my values. Maybe it's broken. I don't know. Usually you'll see like a yellow box to the right of the line that tells you what each of the individual the value of the variables that are in that line are. So here, if I hover over it, it's giving me the values. But usually it'll do it when you're not hovering. Ah, there we go. Maybe, okay, those were this variable, so it's not going to show you. But as you can see here, if you have parameters for a function, it'll tell you what all of those different things are. And so that's super helpful just to see things at a glance as to what's going on. And you can always turn that off. I don't know why. So just as we talked about JavaScript source maps, there's also CSS source maps. So we do a lot of crunching down. We have things like Sass, Less, Compass, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're compiling to JavaScript. So you can set up your source maps so that you can see where where in your Sass files, where in your Less files, or where in your just minified CSS files that thing is actually coming from. Before you had source maps, it was really, really difficult with compiled CSS to figure out where something was coming from. Oh, cool thing. You can auto-reload generated CSS. So if you make a change to your Sass file and you save it and you have some sort of build system auto-building your Sass file into CSS, it will reload the CSS file the next time you go to the Sources tab. Did everybody follow that? When you go to the Sources tab, which is cool because then you can make a change. You can click on the Sources tab, and then it'll change the values in the browser without having to reload the page. Super awesome. You should do this. Default indentation. I myself am a two-spacer. So I usually set mine to 2 spaces. But if you like something that's nice and roomy, you can go with 8 spaces. You can go with a tab character. You can do whatever you want. Color code resource types. So this is pretty cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to network, and I'm going to hit refresh. So you see the colors over here on the right. This is the type of. Oh, sorry. This is the type of thing that it is. So you can see purple here is a JPEG. Purple is a GIF. We've got some PNGs down. I'm sorry, GIF. Cover both crowds. I've got some PNGs down here. Blue is HTML. Orange is your JavaScript. So it allows you to quickly visualize, what colors are what types of files. And when you're zoomed out, you can quickly see, we got a lot of HTML up here that's causing a lot of our wait time, right? So, how am I doing on time? When did I start? 6:30? Okay. All right. I need to move a little faster because I'm barely getting through this. So, color code resources. So let's turn that off. I don't really like that. Console, hide network messages. Sometimes your console gets really, really, really chatty. There's just so much stuff in there going on, and you just need to hide your network messages. I usually have that off because I can always go to the network tab to look at my network calls. You can log REST calls, AJAX calls. Preserve log upon navigation. So the console will clear itself automatically if you refresh the page. If you don't want it to clear itself, you hit preserve log upon navigation. So if you have a bug that's happening like right on when you're leaving the page, or like when you're clicking a link that goes to an external resource, you want to have preserve log upon navigation. Then it'll keep that so that you can do that. Or if you just like keeping your log, preserve log upon navigation. Show timestamps is also pretty awesome. If you're in your console, it'll tell you what time something happened as its uses. And then enable custom formatters. I won't go into detail about that, but you should look this up. So if you want to format your JavaScript objects in a certain way, if you want to format your JavaScript in certain ways with certain colors inside of the console, you can write a formatter, an HTML file, to describe how to visualize your JavaScript in the console. Pretty darn powerful. So the rest of these not terribly important. You can look into them if you want to, but one of the big ones is shortcuts. So if you are a shortcut wizard, this is where you want to look. This is where it's going to tell you how to do all the things, how to get all the places, and tell you how to navigate very quickly. Okay, so let's start by this button right here. This means select something. So if I want to select something and I want to show it inside of the console, I'll select that little click button and I'll click it. That takes me directly to that DOM node inside of the browser. Once I have the DOM node, I can edit the text inside of it. So I can go AAA, boom, done. I can also edit as HTML, so it'll give me the HTML. So I could change this to an H2 if I wanted to. There we go. So I could make it an H2. I can also copy. So this is pretty cool. You can copy the outer HTML, everything outside of it. You can copy the selector. So let me open. It gives you the selector. So you could drop that right in your CSS file and use that selector. Don't recommend it, but it gives you a place to start. You can copy the XPath. So if you're using XPaths in your browser testing framework, you can copy that. You can cut the element. You can copy the element. But here's one really cool thing. Even you advanced users, see this little dot, dot, dot right here? You can move it. Oh, wow. Yeah. I knew I was going to get people on that one. So yeah, you can move elements around. So that's pretty powerful. You can hide an element. So, you know, again, if you don't want to hide that element anymore, you can unhide that element. You can add an attribute. So if I want to add an attribute is type equals, I don't know, whatever your attribute on there would be, you could add class equals foo and add that class of foo. You can you can add active. So I have a real big problem a lot of times. If I have a hover state on something, right? I want to be able to hover over that thing, and then I want to be able to modify the CSS. I want to see what it looks like, but I don't want to have my mouse over it the entire time. So you can say active, you can say hover. So that adds hover to that element. So now I'm always hovered over that element when I'm editing my CSS. Really, really useful. So actually, let's see here. So notice how when I hover, I have an underline there, right? So if I set hover to that, boom, I've got the underline underneath of it. So now I can go in, edit the CSS, and you can see here I have the text decoration underline, and I can modify that. And you can also click this button right here, and that'll open it up, and you can click those on and off. You can say it's visited, active, or focus, all of those fun things. There is scroll into view. So if you have a huge page of stuff and you find the element that you want to work on, you can hit scroll into view and it'll scroll it into view. Unfortunately, there's no scrolling on this example application. You can also break on subtree modifications. So if something happens inside of the DOM underneath of this, so inside of this A tag, oh, that's really terrible semantically. There's a div, and inside of the div you have an A tag. And let's say you add another link tag inside of there. It would break on that and show you in the JavaScript where that has occurred, who in the JavaScript is adding that DOM node. Also, attributes modification. So if you modify the attributes, so if I add something to this A tag, like if I add data, if I add an ID to it, or if I change any of the attributes, it'll break. Also, node removal. So if I delete this node via JavaScript, it will break and show me in the debugger what's going on. So let's talk about animations. So I really like animations. Animations are fun. Don't overuse them. But they're really, really difficult to debug, or they were, because Chrome has been doing as much as they possibly can to make animations easier to understand what's happening. So this is in Chrome, Canary. So this is not normal Chrome yet, I don't believe. If I hit next, oh, I gotta clear my. Give me a second. Let me just refresh here. Let's start from the beginning. Get it nice and clean. All right. So once you open up the animations panel, and you can do the animations panel a couple different ways. It's in your what's called the drawer. And you can open the drawer by hitting the exit button. Or you can open the animations by clicking these two little triangles, two little diamonds. So if I hit exit, normally it's going to be on your console, but you click these three little dots right here, and animations is one of your choices. So we're going to click on animations. And so now it's going to show me the animation over and over and over again, and I can select it, and I can just say, repeat that animation. And I can make it a little clearer over here. So if I hit repeat that animation, it'll repeat it. Now let's say, oh my God, that's really, really fast, because your animations are less than a second usually. So let's slow that down a little bit. If I hit this little 25%, that will slow me down, slow all animations down on the entire site down to 25% speed. So now the animation that used to take 1 second, it's going to take 4 seconds. So let's say I want to, and I can select the animation that I want to look at right here. Which animation? Let's say I want to work on this animation. I'll select it. And it's going to show me all the different things that are being animated as part of that larger animation. So let's say I want the body opacity to take a second, and I want the fade, well, that's a bad idea. I want the body opacity to take less time. I want the H1 to take more time, and I want the P tags to fade in really quick. And so now let's watch that same animation again. And so you can change all the speeds. Super, super awesome. Now, let's take a look. So if you have your Elements panel open while you're doing this, you can click on one of these. So I click on this H tag, right? And it'll show me the actual H1 element that's being animated. Now, I want to figure out what's going on here. And I want to see this animation. So if I click this, it's going to, it'll highlight the things happening over here. See that little purple right there on the 0 milliseconds? Where's the rest of this animation? Oh, come on. Work with me here. So see the animation duration? See how that's changing? So you can go in and you can actually modify it here. Let's say I want to make it just a second. I can modify that, sorry, 1,000 milliseconds, and then it should automatic, that's a bug, it should automatically update in the animation panel to reflect that. Okay, so now, and you can take the animations down to 10%, and it'll show you all the animations that are occurring, super duper powerful, and it'll keep adding them for all the animations that are happening. And because I didn't give it enough time to finish, it's going to do all of the animations as one big panel thing, one big thing. So that is animations. So the next thing that you can do is when you come into a, when you can click on an element in the panel, and you can start playing with CSS. So we've already done some of that with animation, with the animation duration. But let's say I want to change the I want to add a font size. And I'm going to make that font size 12 pixels. And I'm on this H1. I'm on the wrong H1. So I'm going to right-click this one, inspect it, and here I'm going to say font size 12 pixels. Makes it super tiny. So you can edit any one of your CSS properties super quickly. A lot of us probably do this on a daily basis. Super duper powerful. There are ways that if you wanted to, you could make all of your changes here and save them back to your other files. So there are ways to do that. You should look that up. If that's something that's interesting to you. So another cool new feature is the .cls up here. And that allows you to add a new class. So it adds a class of foobar and adds the foobar to the H1 style. So it's a way to quickly add a class to that. And you can just add new selectors to the style sheet by clicking the plus button, and it'll give you a good number of them so that you can divide up the CSS code that you're writing. This is one of my favorite tools. It shows you your width and height. A lot of times your HTML elements are not going to have the exact width and height that you expect them to have. Sometimes they have, they're computed or they're inherited or they're coming from somewhere else. So you want to know how big your element is. Or you want to know what the padding is. It'll tell you what the padding is on all the sides, the border, the margin. So, and you can edit directly in here. So I can add 100, and it'll automatically add 100 pixels of margin to the top of the to the top of this element. You can also look at things that are computed. I don't use it a whole lot. Does anybody use the computed a whole lot? Yeah? What do you use it a whole lot for?
A lot of times it's just trying to troubleshoot where padding's coming from or some sort of.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. Another cool one is event listeners. So if you're in an app that has lots of event listeners listening to on clicks and things like that, and you say, hey, I want to figure out on this paper fab, I want to know what the event listeners are on that. And so let's say I want to find out what the click listeners that are on this thing are. There are no click listeners that I'm setting on this. But if you had if you had an app that was set up that way, adding click listeners, you'd be able to find them really quickly instead of having to search through this weird, this crazy JavaScript file that's like spaghetti string. You can find that event listener super quick. Also, properties. Properties are super useful if you manipulate DOM elements using JavaScript. It gives you like a quick place to find everything that's going on with that element. So let's move on to the console. And stop me when I get out of time, Dana. So if you start getting tired, just give me like a thumbs down. Oh God, I don't know. Am I going too slow? Am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? Okay. If you stop enjoying it, just say, okay, I need to stop. So I'll just go for a little bit while longer until my voice gives out, which is starting to. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Okay, so if I click on this div right here, you'll start seeing equal $0. Has anybody started seeing that and wondering what the hell it is? So if you go down, if you get a bunch of things in your, awesome, thank you. So if you get a bunch of stuff in your console and you're just like, there's just too much in the console, it's too crowded, it's too chatty. To get rid of everything, you just hit Command K or Control K. Windows, anybody? Or you just type clear. Clear. There you go. Clear will clear for you. So I use Command K all the time. Oh yeah, this little circle thing. Yeah, that'll do it too. Okay, so I want to find this HTML, this H1 element. So it's got the $0 next to it. So if I type $0 into the console, it's actually going to give me the DOM element. So now I have access to that DOM element. So I can go $0 dot. If I hit dot, it's going to give me all of the properties on that DOM element. And in Polymer, we use this a lot because everything is a DOM element, pretty much. But you can access things like append child, So you could add a child to an H1 element. Shouldn't do that. You could say style dot background equals, I think it's a string, black. Boom. So now you can edit your CSS from the console and do all that fun stuff. Yeah, somewhat useful. It's a lot more useful for when you're looking for event listeners and things like that, or you want to take that DOM element and pass a reference to it. Okay, so while we're in the oh, where are my notes? So while we're here, I want to talk about console log. Console log, or I want to talk about console. Console.log is very well used. If you're in your JavaScript code and you type console log foobar, it's going to display foobar in the Chrome console or any other console when that code runs. Super useful. But let's say you want to add some color, right? So here is a great way to add color. So you add %C, and then after you get to the end, you get a formatter. So, and you just provide CSS. So you're going to say color blue, font size extra large, right? So it allows you to format your console.logs. Pretty cool. Could be pretty powerful. Like maybe make things red if something's bad. But let's talk about the. So this string here, it says node count %d, comma, and the time is %f. So what that's going to do is it allows you to add extra parameters to this console.log call and provide other things like document.childnodes.length. And yes. Oh, man, that's not cool. Yeah, I can't really scroll, but I can do this. Yeah, that's no fun. So is that better? I'll just do this. What's that? Oh, yeah. I don't know what I'd do without you guys. All right. So why isn't that making bigger? Okay. So let's say, so I have node count. I have the %d and the %f. That just means that I get two things that I can provide as input to the console.log function. Now, if I wanted to provide a string, I would put s. This is a number, so you provide d. So you should look those up. You provide, based on what type of thing that you're providing, string, integer, string, number, all of those things, you provide a different letter. So what that's going to do is going to insert those things inside of the string. So now I have node count 3, and the time is blah, 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 blah. So that's pretty awesome. A lot of times, maybe you want to do a console log and you want to use console to assert something. So now I can assert, and I'm going to just do that. I'm going to assert that the list of child nodes, the length of that, the number of child nodes, the number of child nodes of document has a length of less than 500. And that did not work because why isn't that console asserting? Oh, if your assert if your assert doesn't return to be positive, then it won't do anything. So if you run the assertion, if you run console.assert and it's not if it's false, it will display something. If it's true, if you assert something and it's true, it won't display an error. It'll just blindly go on to the next line of JavaScript. But if it fails, if your assertion fails, it's going to log whatever the second parameter is inside of console.assert. So pretty useful. Instead of creating an if statement and then putting a console log inside of that if statement, you just use console.assert. Console.assert. This one's pretty cool. You can do a grouping of consoles. User equals foo. Okay. Authenticated equals true. So if I run this, it's going to group my consoles. So you use console.group, and then you can nest them inside of each other, and it'll allow you to put little toggles in here so that you can group those console logs. So say you have a bunch of information that you want to console log, and you don't want to have it all displayed, you can have that in there. And you can actually provide a console group collapsed, and it'll have it automatically collapsed, and then you can open it up if you want to. Console log. So you can also do, who knew you could do tables? You can console log tables, and it'll give you a log. It'll give you a table. You just have to give it an array, with objects inside of it that describe your table, and you can make a table right there in your console. So lots of really powerful things you can do in the console. You can also filter if you want only errors, warnings, info, logs, debug, handled. So if you have an error that you have in your application, don't use console log. Use console.error. Use console.warn. Console.warn will automatically appear yellow. You don't even have to set the yellow. Console.error will automatically be red. So pretty helpful. You can filter, and you can put a regex in there to do the filter. Again, super powerful. Preserve log. You can also preserve the log for when you hit refresh. Anybody ever click that down arrow before? That down arrow allows you to jump into the console for any iframes that are on the page. So as you can see, I use 1Password, but I also have a code pen that's on this page, and now I'm inside of the code pen console. So that's pretty cool. So I feel like I'm going to skip debugger, the debugger. Everybody used the debugger before? Yeah? Okay, cool. So network. This is one of my favorite ones. You get headers, your previews. Everybody done that? Trying to skip ahead so we can finish this up. Okay, so this is pretty cool. It gives you the timing of your HTTP call. You got to click this explanation, and you got to read all this stuff down here. Where is it? And it'll explain. Come on. Understanding resource timing. This is where you want to be. So if you click on the understanding resource timing, and I'll put that in the notes as well. It's going to tell you what all these different things are: queuing, stalled blocking, DNS lookup, your SSL. So it's going to tell you where all of your time is. I can't tell you how much time you can save by reworking the number of assets, the number of images, the number of JavaScript files, the number of CSS files, by reworking that to accommodate the number of network calls that you can make to the same domain at the same time. You can save, lots and lots of time, getting your website to appear. If you look here at the top, there's a little blue line. And that blue line is when your first DOM renders, right? So that's when the first piece of, DOM renders. And then this little red line right here, this is when the page is fully loaded. 2 seconds. That's absurdly slow. So there's a lot that's happening between this 500 milliseconds, which is decent, okay. If it had been fully loaded at that time, and 2 seconds. It takes a second and a half to render. So you can take a look at all of the different calls that you're making, and all of the different HTTP requests that are being made during that time, and why it's taking so long. Why is this waiting for 22.4 milliseconds? It seems a bit high. Why is this stalled for a quarter of a second, right? Why would this be stalled? The problem is we're making too many HTTP calls, and there's just not enough. It doesn't have enough. You can't make more than 8 HTTP calls in Chrome to the same domain. So we have too many files. You can do a lot of sorting. You can filter. What I find really, really helpful is your preview and your response and your headers. If you're ever having trouble diagnosing what's going on with your API, for instance, and the API is telling you, I'm giving you this, and you're like, no, you're not giving me that, and you're having a fight over headers, just take your Java guy and show this to him. Sorry, inside joke. What's really cool is you can copy those request headers, so if you want to send them to Slack. So right-click on everything inside the DevTools, because there's lots of additional capability. You can also copy as a curl. So if you're making a network call and you're like, okay, I want to make that network call again, but I want to do it in the console, you can copy it as a curl and you can put it over there. And you can save it as an HAR. And what an HAR does is that's the format to open this sort of thing. So you can open an HAR and view this timeline again inside of another application. It's a standard format. Let's talk about timeline. Who's used timeline before? Okay, so this is a good one, and I'll go maybe like 10 more minutes and then I'll quit talking. My apologies. So what you do is you hit this little record button, and then you perform some actions, and then you stop the recording. You only want to record for a very, very, very short period of time, because there's a lot of information in here. It requires a lot of memory. You want to have it do a very specific action and record it. So I'm going to record, and then I'm going to click the button, and then I'm going to stop recording. So now what it has in here, it tells me all of the things that it did, right? It spent actually that's not very much. There's not much going on in here. I was hoping it was going to be way worse. What's that? Welcome to Chrome pane, really? Oh, here's a good one. Google, I bet you I/O has just like all sorts of stuff. Boom, this one is going to be ridiculous. So timeline. So I'm going to hit record. I'm going to click this thing, make some noise. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now we have, it breaks down everything that's happening inside of there. And it breaks down everything and gives you a pie chart. Pie chart's not really all that helpful. If you have something that's really slow, like you click a button and it seems like the response on that's really slow, you can go in and you can figure out where you clicked on that button, and you can just highlight and drag and open it up. And you can say, okay, well, I want to get in a little deeper on this. And I can see in here, it's evaluating script, experiment JavaScript 1. So that's saying, okay, inside of that, it's running an anonymous function. That anonymous function took 135 milliseconds. 135 milliseconds seems like a little long for a function. Unfortunately, it's an anonymous function, so I don't know how to get into it. That's why you should always name your functions, because then you can figure out what the function is. And then you can also scroll down, and you can see that it's doing some repainting. Let's try and find a good example. There's like a lot of, what do we got in here? This looks like a lot of paints. So as you can see, there's a lot of information, but you can scroll in. And so event blur, it's going to do a function call. That function call took 46 milliseconds. That's perfect. That's low. Well, I don't know what it does, but and then you can see all of the things that are happening. And so this is really powerful when you have a really bad painting problem. Let's say you have an animation where you're resizing a rectangle and it's just stuttering the whole way. The problem there is that you're resizing and moving content all at the same time, and the browser just can't handle it. This will show you what's going on, and you just got to dive deep into it. And I didn't capture paints. Give me a second. Let's zoom in here. Well, how about this? If we want to go into a deeper session on this one we could probably spend 45 minutes on just itself. And I'll find a way better example that I could show. But there is a good series by Paul Lewis out there. It's called Supercharged on YouTube. You should definitely check it out. So that is my Chrome DevTools presentation for the evening. Let's call it.